You've just landed inside Launch Street, the Innovation Podcast, where we interview top innovators out there shaking things up so you can innovate and differentiate and get further, faster in this crazy, cluttered world. And now, innovation thought leader and your superfly host, Tamara Kleinberg.
Good, crazy, early morning, Launch Street. I am up before the sun because I am interviewing Evan Shellshear today, and he is all the way over in Australia. So I'm just getting up, and he's about to go to bed. I wanted to interview Evan because he's come to be known as a commercialization and innovation expert. And I actually came across an article of his, which is why I reached out, about how habituation, basically, getting used to those things that are all around us to the point where we don't even notice them anymore, whether that's a frustration or just how we do things, but how that habituation is actually killing innovation. And he's worked with and delivered cutting-edge software solutions to both Fortune 500 companies and subject matter experts across the globe. He's been part of commercializing more than half a dozen technologies and ideas. He's a seasoned entrepreneur, and he has a best-selling book called Innovation Tools. There's a lot of great stuff in there. And, there's two things that really came out of this interview for me. One is he kind of shifted my thinking on the purpose of the processes that we have in our work and life. And he talks about it as processes are there to remove the mistakes we make, not to tell us how to do something. That has a huge impact to innovation, as you'll come to learn in our conversation. And we also dig into how frustration, all those daily moments in our lives that are super frustrating, are actually our greatest opportunities for innovation. All right, get ready to dig in. Here we go. Evan, thank you so much for being here today, and I should say tonight for you, right?
Exactly. I'm on the other side of the world here.
Well, let's start with this. I want to get a little bit into your background because I think it's fascinating. Talk to me a little bit about how you got into innovation, and I'm going to layer onto that also what you mean or how you play in the innovation space, what that definition is.
So I think how I got into innovation really influences what I see innovation as. The way I got into innovation was really back in Sweden when I was working for the Fraunhofer Institute. I was involved in commercializing a lot of the research we were doing. So we had a lot of industry partners that had a lot of challenges, and they'd come to us with all sorts of really exciting problems. And I'm an intellectually curious guy, so I'd get really excited by these problems. But I've got this kind of business side of me that says, well, design has to be shipped. I think a lot of people have said that the design and good ideas and problems that are solved need to be shipped. And so when I'd embark upon these intellectually curious adventures, I'd always have the goal at the end of the day, well, I need to create a product or a service out of this that makes my customer's life easier. And so that, I guess, was the beginning of my innovation journey for me, working on a lot of exciting projects with some of the world's top automotive brands. And within that, I guess my definition of innovation came out, which for me is one that I think the layman relates to more than any other definition. It's the one that people, I think, would think that is innovation, and it's really new product development or new service development. It's the new iPhone, it's the new laptop, it's the new VR headset, it's the new HoloLens. It's all these new products and services that we feel something different, as something that are improving the status quo. So that's really kind of where I play in the innovation space. And I know there's a lot more to innovation than that, but that for me is what I think represents innovation very strongly and would be in the mind of the average person.
I want to back up to what you said about being intellectually curious, because I do think that is at the heart of, whether you use the word innovation, creativity, just exploring new ideas and connecting dots in new ways. I'd love to hear how you play out intellectual curiosity so that the people listening on Launch Street can think about how they can dial that up for themselves too, because it's just, it's so at the core, isn't it? Absolutely.
I think intellectual curiosity is probably a part of your personality. There's probably a level of your personality. Now, that doesn't mean some people can or can't. When I say it's part of your personality, there's a subtle point in that. And the subtle point in that is finding that thing that makes you intellectually curious. So I come from a family so I did a PhD in mathematical economics in game theory. So my background's quite mathematical. And then you've got my sister who's a doctor, and then you've got my younger brother who's a cook. Now, all of us are intellectually curious, I think, but we've just been lucky to find that space that drives that curiosity. And I think most people around the world are going to be like that. You just need to find that thing that attracts you and interests you from that intellectual curiosity standpoint. And so that would be my point for a lot of the listeners out there, that don't feel that if you can't do mathematics, you're not intellectually curious, or if you can't do some sort of programming or something crazy like that, that you're not intellectually curious. I think really you'll find that when you find that thing you're passionate about, that's where the curiosity will come out, and you'll be able to explore these things and be innovative in an intellectually curious way.
Do you think when you find that thing you're passionate about and you're intellectually curious about that, right? So you have a lot of heart that goes to it too, but do you think that that then ups your curiosity, your kind of eyes wide open in everything you do,
Absolutely.
or does it become funneled?
No, absolutely. I really think one of the things I talk about when I look at my kids and them going to school and stuff like that is really the grades and the academic achievements are not important for me. I think these old 19th century models of education that revolve around achieving high grades and things like that are wrong. I think what we need to do is engage the population, engage people. I think when I look at my children, that what's more important for me, and this is relating back to your question, is to find that thing that motivates them. There have been enough studies that show a highly motivated student or a highly motivated pupil achieves a lot better than a disengaged pupil, no matter how hard they work or how intelligent they are. So for finding that motivation, that passion that drives it, allows you to achieve so much more. And I think what happens there is when you're achieving that much more, again, to answer that even further, is that you attract attention to yourself and you attract other people that want to achieve a lot as well. And so if you're a collaborative individual that likes to work with us, you get that opportunity to avoid just being stuck in a funnel and working in that little niche. You get the opportunity to then branch out and explore the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I totally agree with you about the schools, and I have, two boys that are 8 and 12, and I struggle with the grades based on what's the right answer versus exploring the possibilities. And I think, I was with a group yesterday, and it occurred to me, it's interesting we're having this conversation, because it occurred to me that the same challenge was happening at work for this group as well. These were junior people in a global marketing agency, and they were being rewarded or dinged based on getting the right outcome or not. Exactly. I mean, do you find that's happening too? It's not just in our schools; it's in how we work.
Yeah, I think the challenge there. So I work in a company that you'd call probably a scale up. So we've passed that startup phase and we're scaling up now, where we're trying to figure out how do we grow, how do we become more amazing at what we're doing, how do we double the number of clients without losing our minds, basically. And the challenge that we have there is finding that amazing balance that's very difficult to achieve. And that amazing balance is we need processes and structures in place in this company. We need to lock things down so that the company EBEX, is what it's called, EBEX, what it can do is grow successfully without, screwing things up all the time. That's what the processes are there for, largely to remove the mistakes we make. But at the same time, if we just follow processes and introduce processes into our corporate culture and only say we have to follow them, and, those junior interns in the marketing agencies that you're talking about, if they only are allowed to follow those processes, then they will lose the feeling of being innovative. And we know more than anything, employee engagement is largely about autonomy and the ability to develop yourself and feel like you have the capacity to develop yourself in that role. And I think the challenge for companies around that is really finding that balance between finding processes to make it efficient so that you can scale and scale well. But on the other hand, finding processes that allow for people's creativity an opportunity to show who they are and their personality and what they can do.
I just have to pause for a second and say, I love that kind of pseudo definition you gave of processes are there to remove the mistakes that we make. And I think when you were saying that, I was thinking, God, I think sometimes we think of processes are there to tell us exactly how to do it, which is a very kind of different mindset than, oh, well, this is just here to make sure, things don't fall through the cracks.
Absolutely.
And that I don't make any of the major mistakes that I could make. It's such an interesting flip on how to think about the power process. And in that definition that you just gave, I start to think, oh, well, there's room for innovation if it's about that.
Exactly. Find those cracks of innovation. Find the spots where innovation makes sense. So we develop a product, and the point of our product that we're developing in our company, EBEX, is to make marketing amazing too. So we work in digital marketing, but we're approaching things like artificial intelligence, and we're trying to use a lot of cutting edge tools there because we see that as the future. And what we want to do is put the processes in place where we're doing routine things and look at say, hey, look, here's the process. The process works. If you want to be innovate the process itself. Whereas if you want to be innovative in the sense of a groundbreaking new product or something else, do it outside the process. So take it away and don't try and I guess change the process, because you're going to come up against a lot of don't try and change the process, but try and change what feeds into the process, because you're going to come up against a lot of resistance, because the process was developed over years to understand the mistakes we humans make and to assist us to avoid those mistakes, from the quality assurance checks that we do to basically giving people a checklist. Follow this checklist when you're doing this activity, and simply we'll get it right more often than we get it wrong, because humans are busy. We're human beings. We make mistakes. That's what innovation and good design and stuff like that are all about. They're about making it simpler for us. And people talk about, the 8-second attention span and all this nonsense. Well, the fact is we're so busy that even me with a PhD and working in this company, the time I have available for things is just reducing every day. And I need to be able to focus out on activities that add value to my life. And well, that means I'm spending less time looking at things that I think are irrelevant.
Yeah, someone said to me yesterday, we were talking about, if we know we need to be more innovative, why don't we do more of it? That was my question to the group. And the response I got from one person was, which I think feeds into what you're saying, is she said something like, well, by the time I get through all the things I need to do, I have no energy for innovation. And I thought that was such an interesting response. It kind of plays into what you're saying, is she's just so busy. And, her mindset isn't, well, if I can be more innovative on the front end, I'll save time on the back end, which I totally believe is true. But, we need those processes and procedures to help us have the room as well. I want to dig in a little bit to innovation and the myths around it. What do you think are some of the big, it's either myths or misconceptions that you bump into?
Yeah, I think it's always that kind of light bulb moment, misconception, and that innovation, just basically that innovation's a big mystery. One of the things I do is I'm actually a sessional teacher at the Swinburne University of Technology, and I teach kids their design-led thinking and design-led innovation. And really, the big benefit we get out of them, the first thing I actually tell them when they come in the classroom is I said, look, 90% of what you've learned in all your other classes, you're going to forget. That's just a fact. There's enough studies and enough things.
All that money for nothing.
It's just a waste of time. Like, honestly, universities are going to break in the next 20 years. Something's going to happen to the whole higher education system. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I can change it until I came to the realization that the way I was doing it was wrong. I don't need to change universities, because the whole way we're going to do things is getting turned on its head. Companies are no longer looking at CVs or higher education. They're saying, well, we're going to have to train you from day one when you get on board. So we don't care about your higher education. Right. And so within the university, this is what I tell the students. I say, look, all that stuff you're learning is probably going to be irrelevant. It's this design-led thinking that's going to guide you for the rest of your life, because it's what helps you break down wicked problems, again, with a process, with a set of tools like for my book, Innovation Tools, where I show people, look, it's really, there are approaches that can be used to these things to help you take the steps to be more successful at innovation. And I think that myth around it being, you got to be a genius, you got to be a something, it's so wrong. If you can follow these processes again and understand them and apply them and simply use them, I think you'll be able to innovate massively. I always said to people, the biggest geniuses I've ever met in my life, they've got two characteristics, only two that I've seen. And one of them is huge depth of experience in the area that people think they're a genius in. So this programmer, he's a genius, but actually he's been programming since he was 6. So that kind of helps. And the other thing that I think makes them a genius is the ability to connect dots.
Yeah.
So those two things, so the first one, experience, you can learn it. Connecting the dots is perhaps a little bit harder, but it can also be taught. So I think, for those people that are looking for these innovative flashes of geniuses and those geniuses around, well, they probably just need to look at people that got a lot of experience in a single domain and be taught something like design-led thinking. Then you've got these innovation machines out there.
It's so fascinating to me, because sometimes I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, I'm not the innovative one, but, Susie down the hall with the blue streak in her hair and the funky Pumas and she goes to cafes to work. She knows where all the hot restaurants are. We wait for her to come up with ideas. And I'm like, that's not how it works.
No. You know what I love about that? I love about that you forget all the other 20 people with a blue streak in their hair that aren't innovative. It just so
Right.
happens, exactly. It's because you look for something different. You look for something
Yeah.
different, you find it, and you'll find it. It's like I was watching this movie once where they're talking about someone was like a mathematical freak, and he was obsessed with something, and the guy said to him, "Stop looking for it, because the more you look, the more you'll find it." And it's just like with that innovation stuff. We'll go and try and explain it away with all this rubbish like we can't do it. But the fact is, all your
Right.
listeners can do it now. Give yourself
Yeah.
the right tools, give yourself the experience, and you'll be able to get there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'm a firm believer that everybody's capable of and responsible for innovation. And particularly when you look at not just in your life, but particularly in an organization. And if you want to thrive, you can't wait for Susie with a blue streak in her hair. And to your point, she may not even be innovative, which is really funny. You're absolutely right. I hadn't really thought about that, but you're absolutely right. We look for the one thing.
Yeah.
So, I was reading one of these articles you wrote this is part of the reason why I reached out to you. And there's actually two different things I want to dig into. The first one is you said in the article that your greatest innovation opportunity may be right in front of you. Tell us more about that, because to our kind of joke about Susie with the blue streak, I think the other challenge with innovation is we look for this blue sky's never been seen before. My God, nobody's ever heard of it idea. And I feel like you're kind of telling us something a little bit different, which I really appreciate, but I want to hear you kind of talk more about that.
So there are 2 points I'd like to bring up, and hopefully I won't forget one of them. But if I jump to that article, the one there is, it's a fantastic word I use in that article. Here's the word of the week. It'll be the new meme on Twitter, dishabituation. And it comes from habituation, which is, getting used to something. So your colleague who sits around the corner and eats way too much baked beans, hopefully I'm hoping you out there working have been habituated to him. You're not smelling it anymore, right? What's going on there?
You're right.
That's all over. Hopefully after a while.
It's kind of like, I have dogs, and it's kind of like when someone walks to my house and they can smell the dogs. I'm like, oh God, I can't. This is horrible. Like I didn't even know.
Exactly. And one of the challenges I like to put to people in the design factory, in the design work I do, is you need to notice the pain points and stop putting up with them. One of the challenges people have is they get used to it and they put up with the pain points. And I say, look at that thing you just got annoyed by. Just find the points where you get annoyed and don't just accept it. Don't just accept this annoyance. And this is where I think a lot of the innovative moments can arise. And just people taking things away. One of the most awesome products ever, awesome, for my 7-year-old daughter is the Tangle Tees. It was designed by a guy in the UK, and why hasn't this product existed for 100 years? I don't know. Okay, maybe some of the plastics he uses didn't exist beforehand, but basically it's a brush that doesn't rip out your poor daughter's hair. Yeah. You brush it through their hair and it takes out the tangles, and it's amazing. Why did we put up for 50 years with ripping each other's hair? I guess we just got used to it and thought that's the way it's got to be. We just got to be careful. But this is a person that found that annoyance, and it was actually a guy, funnily enough. Maybe he's got like 6 daughters or something and just couldn't stand it anymore. But just decided that enough's enough and thought he was going to do something about it, and led that user-led innovation, that sort of design-led thinking where he works with the person to find a solution, and that experience and the commitment to it, and just kept going on and on and on until you had the perfect product. And that comes back to the second half of it, the point that I was going to make in terms that it's adding that deep experience and the commitment to these things that I really think sometimes makes it different. I can't overestimate that sometimes, that having real expertise in an area can make a huge, huge difference. You might think you're going to go narrow and lose focus, but I think it's valuable.
So there's a couple things I want to dig into what you said, because they're both important. It's funny, those were my 2 questions. One was about the in front of you. One was the habituation, because that's the other thing that stood out to me in that article. So first of all, I think what I hear you saying, and let's just use the brush example, which is so genius. We have a product over here that actually a colleague of mine's wife created that's kind of a similar type thing because of the frustration. She had a couple daughters, and it was just so frustrating. But it's those moments where we go, well, that's the way it is, where there's the most opportunity for innovation. And, we look at our life and we've got all these frustrations where we go, and then we just keep going. But if we actually stopped and followed that frustration of, well, how could this be better or different? We might actually come up with some amazing innovation.
Exactly. And I think that's the challenge. And that was why it was actually one of my favorite articles that I ever wrote, that one. I really enjoyed writing it. Did a lot of research for it to find some of the innovations that are like that, those moments that are right in front of you. And really, I think here's the challenge I put to people, and I put the challenge to all your listeners. Take the one thing that you feel is just too complex. Take the one thing that just takes too many steps to do, the thing that you're putting up with all this effort and putting in all this time to do it. It may be how you vacuum clean, having to pull the cable out and connect all the different bits and pieces to make it work. It might be the way you have to log into your computer and use passwords and things. And I know a lot of people are working on that. But take something that you feel is complex, that's something that challenges you, that you almost sometimes just couldn't be bothered, and it takes so much time. Those things that take up your time in your day, and that's your innovation point. Make it simpler. Just make these things simpler. It's that design-led innovation. Think about the user.
You know what I love about that too is that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with intellectual curiosity, because you may not get to the quote unquote right answer, but it'll be very interesting to explore and see what possible options could come out. And I love those kind of challenges too when they're posed to a little bit of naive intelligence to people who maybe aren't product developers, because they have no handcuffs to what's possible too. And sometimes they're the ones who bring in those new ideas. You're like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that?
Exactly. And a big part of that's going to be that, again, this design-led thinking approach, which really just focus on the user. Focus on your user. And the best part about being an everyday inventor, an everyday innovator, is that you've got users and people around you. There's no stress. There's no deadline. Just keep talking to people, keep showing people your product, keep getting their feedback, keep iterating, keep being intellectually curious. Make sure you're passionate about it. Make sure it's something that drives you, and just keep playing with it and keep going with it. And eventually, if you keep listening to people and integrating their feedback into whatever product or service you're developing, you can come up with something amazing. It's true.
Yeah, this may be a very blanket statement, but I often find that the great innovators out there, kind of to your point about the great geniuses, there's nothing special about them. They actually, most of them just took a moment to follow that frustration and solve it.
Yeah.
While the rest of us are just like, well, that's the way it is.
Exactly. And I mean, it's understandable too. So for the rest of it, let's not all get down on ourselves too much, like your colleagues and often myself. Sometimes we're just too busy. I'm in such a rush that this thing I just don't have time to even think about it. I just got to move. But that's probably the moment where you're stressed out and trying to get it done and making mistakes. Wow, that's the big innovation. It's right there.
Well, and I think, we're talking about consumer products right now, but I think that same concept, correct me if I'm wrong, Evan, applies to work. So there's a process at work that I find really annoying, and it's 10 steps, but it should be 2. There's, a way that we engage as a team that isn't working, and let me think about how to solve that. So it's not that it has to end up as a product. I think what you're saying, which is the brilliance behind it, is it can be applied to how you approach work and life.
Exactly. We just have to be, my feeling in this is you have to be pragmatic. We can't be silly about it. And we need to be pragmatic and understand what spaces can we innovate in. So in the company, again, we're not necessarily going to redefine that product itself. So you've defined it, you've created a product. Now you've got a process around that product or service to make it more efficient. But what you can perhaps do is say, look, there's this process we've got there. I think we can improve it. And the processes usually arise via iterations on them. So someone comes up with an idea how to improve and they iterate on it. And I think that's where that space is, or a totally new product. I think trying to iterate on that product within that process is a bit of a recipe for failure.
Well, I think for launch leaders out there, that's something to really pay attention to, that sometimes what you're saying, Evan, is the best innovation is just a tweak away, adjustment away. It doesn't go from not working to working exactly as it should be in one step.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about, you have a best-selling book, Innovation Tools, and we'll put a link in the show notes and all that for our listeners. What are 3 of your favorite tools, the ones that are easy to implement out of that book that Launch Street listeners can do right away? I like to leave people with, some action.
Absolutely. I think crowdsourcing. I think the crowdsourcing chapter and how to tap into that, and it gives a lot of people, the book gives a lot of people the ins and outs and the pitfalls with doing crowdsourcing. And I think crowdsourcing is a misunderstood opportunity. People think, why would I want to ask the world of Twitter people and Facebook lovers and all this help with an idea I've got, help with a problem that I want to solve? And the answer I give to them, no, you're right. You don't want them. You want the latent expertise that exists in the world to help you solve your problem. You want to go out there with a specific problem that's nailed down to a very specific area, and you want to find those people that couldn't be bothered sitting watching TV at night, and you want to talk to them and get their input, who are an expert in the area that you're looking to solve this problem in. they're the people you want to tap into. And there exist many platforms out there to do this type of stuff. I mean, Kickstarter is an example of that. It's crowdsourcing your financial problems. So you've got a new product service. Now you need the money to solve it. Well, you can go out there and put it on there and get assistance with that. And there exist many tools and things out there like that I go through that can help a lot. Another one that I think is great, and it's just popping up everywhere, and I think is a great thing, it's actually had exponential growth over the last 10, 15 years, and that's the hackerspace and makerspace movement.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I think it's awesome. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Just get my kids along there building stuff and get them passionate, get them discovering and inventing and problem solving, because the first thing you do when you put your hands on that stuff is it goes wrong. You got to solve the problem. And so I think that's a big opportunity, tapping into your local hackerspace and makerspace networks and using them to prototype your ideas. So don't go out there and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a machine because you think your idea might be great. Go out there and hack yourself a little prototype and put it in front of a consumer and ask them what they think before, you go and bet your house on your dream that's actually got nothing to do with what people really want. The final, yeah.
No, I was just going to say on that with the hackerspace, because they are everywhere and it's not as well known as you would think. Even I think for those of us who know, it's really popular and there's thousands and tens, hundreds of thousands of people involved. Yeah. But it's a beautiful opportunity to also explore, if you have an idea, explore the potential implementation of that idea. If you don't know, you don't have to have it exactly figured out for them to create it. You could come to them and say, here's the solution I'm trying to solve. Here's some ideas. And then you've got this wealth of engineers and printers and fill in the blank of these people who can take things to amazing levels. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I interrupted, so get to the third.
No, I'm glad you interrupted because I'm as passionate as you are about it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
The third one that I thought I'd mention is something that's a bit of a newbie for the book. So it's a thing called behavioral innovation, and there had been a few white papers. Deloitte had written something on it, and a few other people had written stuff about it. And I thought, this thing's got to get cemented in a book somewhere. Someone's got to do that. And so I took on that challenge of writing a chapter on behavioral innovation. And it's a really important thing for people out there to understand. And it's basically, how do our biases and heuristics affect the way we make our decisions around innovation? Whenever you're going to innovate, you need to make a decision. What do we do? Where do I invest my time? Where do I invest my money? Where do I invest my energy? In these different opportunities that exist around you. And you want to make those decisions in the best way possible. And so this is what this chapter explores. How do we make decisions around innovation, in particular focusing on the heuristics and biases that exist? And so that's a great little toolkit to have up your sleeve when you're making these decisions and realizing, well, how do I know I'm going to make a good decision here? Or what's actually going to influence my decision? Because it's been shown time and time again with these things that simply having an awareness of this makes a big difference as to how good your decisions are.
So is this like confirmation bias where, we like the things that are familiar to us, we tend to veer away from the things we don't know, that we're kind of, without even realizing it, we've got this kind of funny biased brain that sends us down certain paths without really understanding that we're doing that?
Exactly. It builds on that. That's exactly the sort of the platform it builds on and takes it to the innovation space. So how is that relevant for innovation? How do these things influence what we do when we're trying to be innovative?
So I'm going to, just in the essence of time, I'm going to flip gears a little bit because I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about this because we started the conversation offline, which was you'd had a long day because you had also won this incredible good design award and you beat out Tesla Model X, right, as one of the competitors. I just have a boxing ring with Tesla on one corner in my head now.
Really?
So I'm curious. I'd love to hear. I want to hear about it, not just from a promotional perspective, but also what did you do? Why did you win? What did you do that I think got you to that place?
We did the one thing that good design embodies, and that is we solved a problem that creates value for people. So, and we solved it in a way that people love it. So we designed this website that just was just the real winner. I was talking to someone from Sky News about this, and I was saying, she's asking me, so what's it like to be the winner? I said, no, the real winner is the consumer, because now the consumer no longer has to wade through all this text and unnecessary nonsense and everything. We've created this beautiful experience that wins for the user, it wins for the business, it wins for everyone. because there are users out there looking for these services, but you've just put up your message on your website or whatever so bad and so incomprehensible that people just can't figure it out. But you've got fans out there that love you. And so what embodied that was really this amazing experience that creates value. And that was what the judges loved about it.
So I just want to stop for a second because that is a huge insight that we actually lose sight of so easily, which is what you said of you solved a problem that created value for people. Will you unpack that statement? Because that's easier said than done.
Yeah, so again, I think it's one of these wicked problems. It comes back to these challenging problems where how do we understand what creates value for people? And that gets straight back to the same place. And this is the revelation for me, that every time I try and do this, I keep coming back to the same place. And it's that design-led approach to solving problems, putting the human at the center, and then using all the design-led thinking tools like affinity maps and interviews and value proposition canvas and the service design blueprint and all these different things. These tools, there's a plethora of tools out there that you can use nowadays to guide you through these processes. And that's really the value proposition discovery. We discover what people love. And then we use our experience to overlay a wonderful experience on top of that that makes that value creation just that much nicer and makes that value discovery as well. We don't want to hide that value that we've created for them either. So we want to make sure that that value discovery is as simple as possible. And then again, at no point do we ever stop looking at how the user's interacting with the value proposition that we've created to make it clearer and even better for them.
So first of all, congratulations is what I should say, because that's pretty exciting. And I appreciate what you're saying. This is kind of why I wanted to dig in around you created something of value. And I think sometimes, especially when we're new to a category or world, we try to create innovation for innovation's sake.
Exactly.
And I mean, there's several examples of that. I might argue that wireless headphones on the new, not so new now, but Apple iPhone might be an example of that. Like sometimes it's actually not what the consumer wants. It's cool, but does it really actually do anything that people are going to be appreciative of in the long run, or were you just going to wait for the next one and avoid all that when they realize? That's my own little soapbox about the wireless headphones, because I don't want to spend $50 and then lose them and spend $50 and lose them.
Actually, I have to say, I can't wait to get wireless headphones because I've got these headphones with a long cable. And when I put them in, the number of times that people walk past me in the train and hit that cable and it yanks on my ears. And I'm just like, no, you didn't just do that again. That's a second person. Stop it. Just leave me alone. I'm like, where are wireless headphones?
You got to keep them close in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hysterical.
I used to laugh at people that would pull the headphones up through their shirt. I thought, oh, how inconvenient. Until I realized that they're just protecting their ears from getting ripped off by people that walk past, yank on the earphone cord.
Oh my God. I ran into a woman once who was actually trying to create a magnet to sit on your shirt, like a clip. So if somebody yanked it, it wouldn't pull out of your ears because it would pull on the magnet and it would catch it. Yeah, it was really interesting. I'm not sure where she is in production. It was a super cool idea. She actually came up with the idea because her mom has an oxygen tank. And that's constantly like the dog runs over the cords, and it pulls out of your nose and it's actually really uncomfortable. So I'm hoping she brings that to market soon because clearly you and I both need them.
Exactly. I would, all those train trips, you would save me a lot of pain.
But you know what? This conversation, I think it leads to an important point, which is don't assume because you do or don't want something that everybody does or doesn't want something. So you and I have completely different perspectives on the wireless. I think it's a horrible idea and all I see is a money drain. And you're like, oh my God, thank God, because I'm tired of people pulling it out of my ears, which is a great it's a great point of get out there. You should be customer centric from the very beginning and, understand who your niche is and who your niche isn't and understand, what's that value that you can provide and to whom.
Exactly. And that ties into all the things we've talked today about experience, understand where you can add value in your experience, the customer, take that design-led thinking approach, the discovering those issues that are every day around you that you've overlooked. Yeah. I think a lot of these topics tie in very closely together to give you that overall picture about how do we just do that simple innovation that makes a difference? How do we do it? We do it with these things.
So let's say that you do those things, which I totally agree with. What do you think then becomes some of the biggest challenges or things you need to consider when then moving forward with the idea, actually trying to bring it to market? Because that is the other part of the equation, isn't it?
Here is where I drop the bombshell. Here's where I think, here's the opportunity. Here's the opportunity in this space, I reckon. Everyone talks about things like lean startup. We've got the design-led thinking, we've got the lean startup, which is, with lean startups perhaps a little bit further along, I would say, from the design-led thinking process where we actually launch a product, but the design-led thinking never stops. Where we need to connect these things, and my challenge to your listeners again, I would love to see someone do this, is bring marketing and sales into that. Like, we act like the product development occurs in a vacuum. We act like just do it and talk to your customers, it's all good, but you have to somehow reach your customers. You have to somehow get there and convince them to actually be interested. You need scale. You need the opportunity to get to them somehow. And here's where I think the person that comes in and grabs a lean startup and combines it with marketing and sales to be the lean, utopia, and it creates this amazing approach that imbues marketing and sales from day one, because it needs to be, is the person that's just going to take this whole thing to the next level.
I think there's a second layer to what you're talking about too, which is not just the input and the ideas that come out of doing that, but also the buy-in. I mean, I don't know if you see this. I see this time and time again where new product development goes off and does something in a silo, and then they lob the tennis ball over the court, and it's like a one-way tennis match. Nobody wants to. Nobody wants to pick it up. They're ducking and weaving. Like, I got enough to do. I don't need your new idea. And part of it's because they weren't involved with it from the beginning.
No, exactly. And what I'm saying is we need to go even further than that by integrating the whole marketing concept, the whole, how do we share this love with the world? So we've found this love with this group. Now, how do we reach scale? How do we do that? Because that's the purpose of the marketing. How do we achieve that and sell it? So who's going to be the person out there that's going to take something like lean startup and make it the lean utopia, which creates marketing and the different bits and pieces and the whole process, the holistic process from the very first step to the launch of the product in the market. That is the next step for me.
So before we close up, I want you to, this is another thing we were talking about offline. I want you to share a little bit about one of the things you experienced, I think it was at this competition, and correct me if I'm wrong, about this product that was conceptualized, brought through development, and then launched in what we think is 24 days. We're going to confirm the timing because we were not sure exactly about it, but the concept still is pretty freaking amazing. Will you talk about that? And some of the lessons you think that come out of that?
Absolutely. This is amazing. It's called The Game of Awesome. It was developed by a group in New Zealand. And what they did is they wanted to help teach students that I think are in like grade 5 to grade 8, around that age, the concepts, I guess, about problem solving and creativity, but also teach them that design thinking approach and have design thinking embedded in the product from day one. Within 24 days, working very closely with the students, they actually had the number one product that took out the whole design award competition there, and went home just with this amazing little thing that had been made in 24 days. Now, most products and services of design can take years to be perfected, but it was perfected from day one because it had that end user in mind from day one and a team that were just motivated and passionate about this problem. And it's an amazing success story, just a bunch of cards that just get kids thinking and interacting in a totally different way and solving problems and inspiring them. So I think it's an amazing little tool for young people to be innovative with.
And I think what's so cool is 24 days.
Unbelievable. But that's it. From day one, you know what they did right? They made few mistakes. And they made few mistakes because they involved their end user from day one and they worked with them from day one. They made less mistakes. Simply, they shortened that cycle just by making less mistakes. I think that's again, the processes as you grow, but it's also the reason for the lean startup. It's simply about making less mistakes, or if you do make mistakes, you make them quickly and early and you move on from them. So they're not as drastic.
And don't you find that customers are excited to go on the journey with you? I mean, I think we're sometimes, and I see this a lot in larger organizations, less in startups because they have to involve the customer. I think there's more of a need to get that feedback quickly, but we're afraid to put our new ideas out there because what if they don't like them? What if it falls short? But haven't you found that the customers, they're pretty excited to go along the journey with you and to be a part of it?
It's amazing. It's amazing the passion and the free effort you can get from people because you're solving a problem they genuinely want solved. They'll help you build your company for nothing, just for the fact that this is something that annoys them, and you've found what we were talking about before, that magic value. You've found something of value to someone, and they just need this problem solved, and they will just do anything to help you get there, solve the problem. They don't even care about the scaling and doing all that, because that's not what they're interested in. They just have a problem to be solved, and you've found the solution.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I feel like we could talk on and on. We're going to have you back. But for now, where can people go to find out more or connect with you?
Definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. More than happy to talk to you. I always enjoy a lot of the conversations I have there. I'm active on Twitter. My Twitter handle's @Shellshear. I've also got my Facebook page, Innovation Tools. I've got a webpage for the book, innovationtoolsbook.com. Just connect with me. Shoot me some questions. If you're reading the book, I am looking, I'd love to do a second edition. So I'm getting a lot of, again, working with the people, just getting a lot of fantastic feedback and ideas around what I could do better. So let me know. Happy to chat about that type of stuff. And if you want to bounce ideas off me, happy to do that.
Excellent. We'll put all those links in the show notes too for people, so don't worry about pulling over and trying to write them. The last question for you is, what's the one thing people would be surprised to learn about you as, hobby, passion, experience?
Ooh, one thing you'd be surprised to learn about me is that I've got Swedish citizenship and I live in Australia. How's that?
Do you have Australian citizenship too?
Yeah, I do.
You do. You're dual.
I'm dual. I was born in Australia. I was born in Brisbane and then went overseas and had a great time for 10 years over there. And just before I got back, I picked up Swedish citizenship and am now living here down under with a Swedish passport. So that not many people know that.
Huh. I like how you say, I picked it up. It's like I stopped at the grocery store, right? So I picked up a passport.
One of those. They had a whole bunch there, and I just thought, I'll take the Swedish one. That'll do.
That's right. That sounds helpful. Well, Evan, thank you so much for coming by today. This was an incredible conversation. I'm looking forward to, having another one.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to be on the show, and I'm really looking forward to joining you again.
Thanks for hanging out with us inside Launch Street. When you're ready to take your game to the next level, join the thousands of others that are upping their innovation edge on GoToLaunchStreet.com, the top online education resource and community platform for innovators looking to use innovation to get measurable results. Go to LaunchStreet.com.